She collapsed on divorce day, but when a billionaire walked in and called her my wife, her ex realized he lost a queen. Hi, my beautiful family. It's your Mr. Peter. If you're here for the first time, let me say this from the bottom of my heart. Welcome home. You've just stepped into a space where love is never rushed and your soul is seen, not judged, not forgotten, but embraced. Before we begin, I want to give you something, a prayer not just spoken but felt, made of love, meant for you. May your heart be wrapped in warmth where it once felt cold. May peace pour over you like golden sunlight through open windows. May the battles you've fought in silence be honored in heaven. I pray that your deepest ache is met with the gentlest healing and that joy finds you, not loud but steady. You are not behind. You are not overlooked. You are beautifully becoming and eternally loved. Now, my sweet family, please don't leave this story in the middle. It was written with care, with emotion, with you in mind, always. And when it ends, I ask with love. Rate this story out of 10 in the comments. Not for numbers, but to feel you, hear you, hold this space together. And if you don't, I'll quietly mind, because I truly care. Please like this video. Leave something kind. Share it with someone whose heart needs to be reminded. They matter. Let this family shine, not just in light, but in love. Let's begin with all my love, always.
Angela Morris had never felt more powerful or more broken than she did in this moment. Standing in the doorway of courtroom 3A, she watched her soon-to-be ex-husband, Marcus Hartford, crumble as the judge's final words echoed through the air. The defendant's petition is denied. Mrs. Morris retains full ownership of her law practice, her assets, and her dignity. Her dignity. The judge had actually said that. The click of her designer heels, the last expensive gift Marcus had given her before she discovered his betrayal, rang out like gunshots against the marble courthouse floor. Each step through the grand hallway was a declaration, each breath a victory song. She had walked into this building as a woman destroyed by lies and was walking out as a queen reclaiming her throne. Victory should have tasted sweet. Instead, it tasted like tears she refused to shed and dreams she'd never get back. "Angela, wait!" Marcus's voice cut through the courthouse chatter, desperation bleeding through his usual arrogance. She turned slowly, her dark eyes meeting his for what she hoped would be the last time. Even now, after everything, he was still handsome in that privileged way that had first attracted her. Tall, well-dressed, with the kind of confident smile that money could buy. Behind him, the Hartford family stood in their expensive suits, whispering threats about appeals and revenge. Marcus's mother, Patricia, with her perfectly styled silver hair and cold blue eyes, was already on her phone, no doubt summoning their army of lawyers. The Hartford family had money, connections, and a legacy of destroying anyone who dared challenge them. But Angela Morris possessed something they couldn't comprehend. She had survived poverty, discrimination, and abandonment. She was a queen who had built her own kingdom from nothing, and no one would strip that from her. "There's nothing left to say, Marcus," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "The judge made it clear. The law practice is mine, the house is mine, and my dignity is mine to keep. You can't seriously think you'll survive without my family's support," he sneered, stepping closer. His designer cologne, the same scent that once made her heart race, now churned her stomach. "You're nothing without us, Angela. Nothing but a project girl who got lucky." The words struck her like physical blows, each one calculated to shatter the confidence she'd built over years of fighting for her place in a world that had never welcomed her. But Angela had endured worse. She'd survived worse. "I was never nothing, Marcus. I was simply naive enough to believe that love could overcome the venom in your heart." She turned away from him, her spine straight, her chin elevated like the queen she'd always been. "Goodbye, Marcus. May you find whatever hollow satisfaction you're truly seeking." She walked away from him with purpose, her heels clicking against the marble as she headed for the courthouse exit. The weight of the last 2 years finally began to settle on her shoulders. The sleepless nights preparing for court, the humiliation of discovering Marcus's affairs with his secretary, his tennis instructor, and God knew who else. The heartbreak of realizing that his family had seen her as nothing more than a temporary entertainment. The autumn Denver air hit her face as she stepped outside, crisp and cold against her skin. She had parked 6 blocks away, too proud to pay for courthouse parking, too broke after legal fees to afford the luxury. Her savings were depleted, her practice barely surviving, and her heart was shattered into pieces she wasn't sure she could ever put back together. She made it halfway down the courthouse steps when her legs began to shake. The adrenaline that had carried her through the hearing was fading, replaced by an exhaustion so deep it seemed to reach her bones. She gripped the cold metal railing, trying to steady herself, but the world began to tilt and spin. I can't, she whispered to herself, her breath coming in short gasps. The stress, the lack of sleep, the emotional toll of the divorce, it all hit her at once like a freight train. She hadn't eaten in 12 hours, hadn't slept properly in weeks. Her body was shutting down. Her knees buckled and she felt herself falling toward the concrete steps. This was it. She was going to collapse on the courthouse steps like some tragic figure, giving Marcus and his family one final moment of satisfaction. But instead of hitting cold concrete, she found herself caught in strong, warm arms. The scent of honest work and clean soap filled her nostrils as she was lifted effortlessly against a broad chest. Through her blurred vision, she saw eyes the color of a stormy sky looking down at her with genuine concern. "I've got you," a deep voice murmured, and something in those 3 words made her feel safer than she had in months. "You're okay. I've got you." Angela tried to focus on her rescuer's face, but her vision was swimming. She could make out strong features, light brown hair, and those incredible eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. He was wearing work clothes, a flannel shirt and jeans, and his hands bore the calluses of honest labor. "My sister went through something similar," he said quietly. His voice meant only for her. "Divorce court. I was here for her hearing, saw you come out of the other courtroom. You looked like you were carrying the weight of the world. Call an ambulance," he shouted to someone nearby, his voice carrying authority that cut through the courthouse crowd. "She needs medical attention." "No," Angela tried to protest, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm fine, I just need—" "You need to be checked out," he said firmly, settling her more comfortably in his arms. She realized he was kneeling on the steps, holding her against his chest, like she weighed nothing. "You scared me when you started to fall." There was something about the way he said, "scared me," that made her heart flutter despite her exhaustion. This stranger was looking at her like she mattered, like her well-being was important to him. When was the last time someone had looked at her that way? The sound of sirens filled the air, and Angela realized a crowd had gathered. Through the faces staring down at her, she saw Marcus pushing through, his expression shifting from anger to confusion to something that might have been concern. "Angela!" "What happened?" Marcus demanded, but her rescuer's arms tightened around her protectively. "Step back," the stranger said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge that made Angela's pulse quicken. "Give her space to breathe." When the paramedics arrived, Angela expected her rescuer to hand her over and disappear into the crowd. Instead, he stood up with her, still in his arms, his jaw set with determination. "I'm riding with her," he announced to the paramedics, his tone brooking no argument. "Are you family?" one of the EMTs asked, already preparing the gurney. Angela felt her rescuer's arms tighten around her, his chest rising and falling with a deep breath. In that moment, with her world spinning and her heart breaking, she looked up into those stormy eyes and saw something that took her breath away, a man who cared about her well-being more than Marcus ever had. "She's my wife," he said, his voice carrying such conviction that even Angela almost believed it. The words hit the crowd like a thunderbolt. Marcus's face went white, his mother gasped audibly, and Angela felt her heart skip a beat. This stranger, this beautiful, gentle stranger, was claiming her as his own. Your wife?" Marcus sputtered, his voice cracking with disbelief. Her rescuer looked directly at Marcus, his eyes blazing with protective fury. "That's right. My wife. And if you don't step back and let the paramedics do their job, we're going to have a problem." As Angela was loaded onto the gurney, she caught Marcus's expression, shock, confusion, and something that looked almost like regret. For the first time since she'd known him, Marcus Hartford looked like a man who was realizing he'd lost something precious. The last thing she saw before the ambulance doors closed was her mysterious rescuer climbing in beside her, his hand gently taking hers, his eyes never leaving her face. In that moment, as the sirens began to wail and they pulled away from the courthouse, Angela Morris felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt like a queen being rescued by her king. And somewhere in the crowd behind them, Marcus Hartford watched the ambulance disappear, finally understanding that he had lost the most incredible woman he'd ever known to a man who had claimed her as his own in less than 5 minutes. The queen had fallen, but she hadn't fallen alone. Chapter 2. The Protector's Heart. Angela Morris woke to the sound of rain against hospital windows and the gentle murmur of a voice she didn't recognize but somehow trusted completely. "And I told them that the carburetor was shot, but they insisted on trying to fix it themselves. 3 hours later, they're calling me back, begging me to come rescue them." She kept her eyes closed, listening to the warm laughter in that voice. The same voice that had promised her safety when her world was falling apart. The same voice that had claimed her as his wife. "You're awake," he said softly, and she could hear the smile in his words. "I can tell by the way your breathing changed." Angela opened her eyes slowly, preparing herself for the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room. Instead, she found herself looking into those same stormy blue eyes that had caught her when she fell. He was sitting in an uncomfortable plastic chair beside her bed, his large frame somehow folded into the small space, his attention completely focused on her. "Hi," she whispered, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Hi yourself," he replied, and the gentleness in his tone made her heart flutter. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was hit by a truck," she admitted, trying to sit up. Immediately, he was on his feet, helping her adjust the hospital bed, his hands careful and warm against her arms. "The doctor said you were dehydrated and exhausted. When's the last time you ate a real meal?" Angela thought about it and realized she couldn't remember. I don't know. Maybe 2 days ago." His jaw tightened and she saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. 2 days? Jesus, Angela. "You know my name," she said, surprised. "I asked the nurses. I hope that's okay." He settled back into his chair, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "I'm Bernard Ellison." "Bernard," she repeated, liking the way his name felt on her tongue. "Thank you for everything. You didn't have to stay." "Yes, I did." His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "Someone needed to make sure you were okay." "But you told them I was your wife." The words hung in the air between them, and Angela felt her cheeks warm. "Why did you do that?" Bernard was quiet for a long moment, his eyes studying her face like he was memorizing every detail. "Because you looked like you needed someone to claim you, to protect you. And because—" He paused, running a hand through his hair. "Because that bastard ex-husband of yours was looking at you like you were something he could throw away." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made her breath catch. "You don't even know me. I know enough." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I know you're a lawyer who just won a difficult case. I know you're strong enough to walk out of that courthouse with your head held high, even when you were falling apart inside. I know you're beautiful enough to stop traffic, and I know that any man who would hurt you is a fool." Angela felt tears prick her eyes. "You don't understand. I'm not someone men fight for. I'm not someone men claim. Then you've been meeting the wrong men." The simple statement hit her like a physical blow. She stared at him, this gentle giant in work clothes and worn boots, and felt something shift inside her chest. "I should go," she said suddenly, throwing back the hospital blanket. "I have work to do, bills to pay." "Whoa, hold on." Bernard was on his feet again, his hands gentle but firm on her shoulders. "The doctor wants to keep you overnight for observation. You can't just walk out of here." "I can't afford to stay overnight," Angela said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I don't have insurance that covers this, and I just spent everything I had on legal fees." Bernard's expression softened, and he sat on the edge of her bed, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something clean and masculine that made her want to lean into him. "Don't worry about that," he said quietly. "I'll take care of it." "No." Angela shook her head firmly. "I don't accept charity. I don't accept handouts. I've been taking care of myself since I was 16, and I'm not going to stop now." "It's not charity," Bernard said, his voice patient. "It's what someone does when they care about another person. You don't know me well enough to care about me." Bernard was quiet for a long moment, his eyes never leaving hers. "Maybe not. But I'd like to, if you'll let me." Before Angela could respond, there was a knock at the door. A nurse entered with a cheerful smile, carrying a tray that smelled like heaven. "Good evening, Mrs. Ellison," the nurse said, setting the tray on Angela's bedside table. "Your husband insisted on ordering from the Italian place down the street instead of hospital food. He said you needed something that would actually give you strength." Angela's eyes widened as she looked at the tray. Homemade minestrone soup, fresh bread, and what looked like the best lasagna she'd ever seen. Her stomach growled audibly. "Thank you," Bernard said to the nurse, his tone suggesting this was perfectly normal. "Could you give us a few minutes?" When the nurse left, Angela turned to stare at him. "Mrs. Ellison." "I had to keep up the story," he said with a shrug, but she could see the blush creeping up his neck. "Besides, you need to eat, and hospital food is terrible. You can't just take care of me like this," Angela protested, even as she reached for the soup. The first spoonful was warm and perfect, and she had to suppress a moan of pleasure. "Why not?" "Because I don't know you, because you're a stranger, because ... She paused, searching for the real reason. "Because people don't just do this, not for me." Bernard's expression grew serious. "Angela, can I ask you something?" She nodded, still eating the soup like she hadn't seen food in days. "What happened to you? Who hurt you so badly that you can't believe someone would want to take care of you?" The question hit her like a physical blow, and she set down her spoon with trembling hands. I can't." "You don't have to tell me," Bernard said quickly. "But I want you to know that whatever happened, it doesn't define you. You're worth caring for. You're worth protecting." Angela felt tears spill down her cheeks before she could stop them. "You don't understand. I've never been enough. Not for my father, who left when I was born. Not for my mother's boyfriends, who saw me as an inconvenience. Not for Marcus, who—" She stopped, unable to finish. "Who what?" Bernard's voice was dangerously quiet. "Who said I was practice? That I was good enough for now, but not good enough to keep? Not good enough to be seen with in public? Not good enough to take home to his family?" The words poured out of her like blood from a wound. He said I was entertaining, but I wasn't wife material, not for a man like him. Bernard stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Angela could see his hands clenched into fists, his jaw tight with rage. "That son of a bitch," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I should have hit him when I had the chance." "Bernard, no, listen to me." He turned back to her, his eyes blazing with an intensity that took her breath away. Everything he said was a lie. You are magnificent, Angela. You are brilliant and strong and beautiful, and any man who can't see that is blind. "You don't know me," she whispered. "I know enough." He sat back down, reaching for her hands. "I know you're a fighter. I know you're someone who stands up for what's right. I know you're someone who deserves to be loved completely, honestly, and forever." Angela stared at him, this man who had appeared out of nowhere and was speaking to her like she was precious. "Who are you, Bernard Ellison?" "I'm just a guy who works with his hands and believes in treating people right," he said, squeezing her fingers gently. "I'm a guy who thinks you're the most incredible woman he's ever met, and who would like very much to prove to you that good men still exist." "I don't date," Angela said quickly. I can't. "I'm not asking you to date me," Bernard said with a gentle smile. "I'm asking you to let me be your friend, to let me bring you soup when you're sick and make sure you eat real food, to let me be someone you can count on." Angela looked into his eyes and saw something she hadn't seen in years. Genuine care with no agenda, no expectation of return. This man was offering her friendship with no strings attached, and it terrified her. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "Neither do I," Bernard said with a laugh. "But maybe we can figure it out together." Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside the hospital room, something warm and fragile and precious was beginning to bloom. Angela didn't know what to call it yet, but for the first time in months, she wasn't facing the future alone. And Bernard Ellison, billionaire CEO pretending to be a simple working man, looked at the woman in the hospital bed and knew his life had just changed forever. Chapter 3. Love's First Whisper. 3 days after her collapse, Angela Morris was beginning to believe in miracles. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her small apartment, staring at her reflection and hardly recognizing the woman looking back at her. For the first time in months, her dark eyes held a spark of something that looked suspiciously like hope. Her phone buzzed on the counter and she smiled before even looking at the screen. She already knew who it was. "Bernard. Good morning, beautiful. Did you eat breakfast?" "Angela. Good morning to you too. And yes, I had the eggs and toast you brought yesterday." "Bernard. Good. I was thinking about lunch. There's this little soul food place on Colfax that makes the best cornbread in Denver. Want to try it?" Angela's fingers hovered over the phone. In the 3 days since the hospital, Bernard had texted her every morning and evening, brought her groceries, and somehow managed to make her laugh even when she was drowning in work. He was keeping his promise to be her friend, but the way he looked at her made her heart race in ways she hadn't felt in years. "Angela, I'd like that, but I'm paying for my own meal." "Bernard, we'll see about that." "Angela. Bernard, I'm serious. I don't want you spending money on me." "Bernard. It's just lunch, Angela. Friends buy each other lunch." She stared at the message, her heart doing that fluttery thing it did whenever he called her his friend. The word should have been safe, comfortable. Instead, it felt like a beautiful lie they were both telling themselves. "Angela. Okay, but somewhere cheap." "Bernard. Trust me, I know just the place." An hour later, Angela stood outside Mama Ruby's soul food kitchen, watching Bernard walk up the street toward her. He was wearing jeans that had seen better days and a simple button-down shirt that looked like it had come from a thrift store. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd rushed to shower after work, and he carried himself with the easy confidence of a man who worked with his hands. "You look beautiful," he said when he reached her, and the way he said it made her believe it might be true. "You look like you came straight from a job site," she replied, trying to keep her tone light even though her pulse was racing. "I did." He held up his hands, showing her the calluses on his palms. "Sorry if I smell like sawdust and paint. I tried to clean up, but—" "You smell like honest work," Angela said, and meant it. "I like it." Something flickered in Bernard's eyes, and for a moment she thought she saw him hesitate. But then he smiled and gestured toward the restaurant. "Shall we?" Mama Ruby gets cranky if people stand around blocking her door. Inside, the restaurant was exactly what Angela had expected. Checkered tablecloths, mismatched chairs, and the kind of warmth that only came from family recipes and genuine love. The air was thick with the smell of cornbread and collard greens, and Angela felt her stomach growl in response. "Bernard," a large woman with graying hair and a smile that could light up a room, emerged from behind the counter. "Baby, where have you been? I haven't seen you in ages." "Hey, Mama Ruby," Bernard said, accepting a hug that would have crushed a smaller man. "I've been busy with work. This is Angela, the friend I told you about." Mama Ruby turned her attention to Angela, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. "So you're the one who's got our Bernard all twisted up. Girl, you are even prettier than he said, and he's been singing your praises like a man struck by lightning." "He has not," Angela protested, but she could feel her cheeks warming. "Oh, honey, yes, he has." Mama Ruby laughed, a rich sound that filled the restaurant. "He came in here yesterday asking what kind of food would help a woman recover her strength, talking about how you've been working too hard and not eating enough. That man is completely smitten." "Mama Ruby," Bernard said, his voice carrying a warning that only made the older woman laugh harder. "Don't you Mama Ruby me, boy. I've been watching you for 3 years, and I've never seen you bring a woman in here. This one must be special." Angela felt her heart skip as she glanced at Bernard. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, something tender and vulnerable that made her want to reach out and touch his face. "She is special," he said quietly, and the words hit her like a physical caress. Mama Ruby seated them at a corner table, close enough that their knees brushed when they settled down. Angela tried to focus on the menu, but she was acutely aware of Bernard beside her. The way he tapped his fingers rhythmically on the table when thinking, the way he kept stealing glances at her as if ensuring she was really there. "So, what's good here?" she asked, attempting to break the tension. "Everything," Bernard said. "But the fried chicken is legendary, and the mac and cheese is—" He paused, closing his eyes and making a sound that was almost sinful. "It should probably be illegal in several states." Angela laughed, and the sound surprised her. When had she last laughed like that? Light and free and completely uninhibited? "I'll have the fried chicken then," she decided, "and the mac and cheese that's probably illegal." "Make that too," Bernard called to Mama Ruby, who was already heading toward the kitchen. "And cornbread," Mama Ruby called back. "Extra butter for the skinny girl." When they were alone again, Bernard reached across the table and touched Angela's hand. "You doing okay? You seemed tense walking in here." "Better now," she said, realizing it was true. "I slept through the night for the first time in months." "Good. You needed it." His thumb traced gentle circles on her knuckles. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. What made you want to be a lawyer?" Angela was quiet for a moment, surprised by the question. "My mother," she said finally. "She was gorgeous, the kind of beautiful that stops traffic. But she was also poor and black and young. Men took advantage of that." Bernard's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. When I was 7, she started dating this man. Richard Sterling. He was wealthy, sophisticated, everything she'd ever dreamed of. He swept her off her feet, promised her the moon. Angela's voice grew bitter. He moved us into his mansion, bought us nice clothes, made us feel like we finally belonged. What happened? I happened. Angela pulled her hand away, wrapping her arms around herself. I was too dark for his social circle, too obviously not his biological daughter. His friends started making comments, asking questions, so he gave my mother an ultimatum, him or me. Jesus, Bernard breathed. She chose me. Of course she chose me. But not before he'd already destroyed her sense of self-worth. He'd made her dependent on him, cut her off from her friends, convinced her she was nothing without him. When we left, she had nothing. No money, no job skills, no confidence. That's why you became a lawyer, Bernard said, understanding. I swore I'd never be powerless like that, never be at someone else's mercy. I'd make my own way, fight for women who couldn't fight for themselves. Angela looked down at her hands. Fat lot of good it did me. I still ended up married to a man who saw me as a temporary amusement. No, Bernard said firmly. You ended up divorcing a man who wasn't worth your time. There's a difference. Before Angela could respond, Mama Ruby appeared with their food. The table was suddenly covered with plates of golden fried chicken, creamy mac and cheese, perfectly seasoned collard greens, and cornbread that looked like it had been blessed by angels. Eat up, babies, Mama Ruby said, but her eyes were on Bernard. And Bernard, you make sure this girl gets plenty. She's too skinny. Yes, ma'am, Bernard said solemnly. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily. Bernard told her about his work, carefully vague stories about construction jobs and difficult clients. Angela found herself relaxing, laughing at his stories, enjoying the simple pleasure of sharing a meal with someone who actually listened when she talked. This is incredible, she said, taking another bite of the mac and cheese. I think I'm in love. With the mac and cheese? Bernard asked, but there was something in his voice that made her look up. With the mac and cheese, she confirmed, but their eyes met across the table and held. Good, he said quietly, because I think I'm in love too. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that had nothing to do with food. Angela felt her heart start to race, felt that familiar flutter of panic when things got too real, too fast. Bernard. I'm not talking about the mac and cheese, he said, his voice gentle but determined. I'm talking about the way you tilt your head when you're thinking, the way you light up when you laugh, the way you fight for what's right, even when it costs you everything. You don't know me, Angela whispered, but the protest sounded weak even to her own ears. I know enough. Bernard reached across the table again, this time taking both of her hands in his. I know you're brave and brilliant and beautiful. I know you've been hurt and I know you're scared. But I also know that what I feel for you is real, and I think you feel it too. Angela stared at him, this man who had appeared in her life like a guardian angel and was now telling her he was falling in love with her. The rational part of her brain screamed warnings. It was too soon, too fast, too dangerous. But her heart was singing a different song entirely. I do feel it, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. And it terrifies me. Why? Because I don't trust myself, because I thought I loved Marcus, and look how that turned out. Because I'm afraid that if I let myself care about you, you'll realize I'm not worth it and leave. Bernard stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, Angela thought he was walking away, proving her fears right. Instead, he came around the table and knelt beside her chair, taking her face in his hands. Angela Morris, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You are worth everything. You are worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth loving with everything I have, and I am not going anywhere. Promise me, she whispered, tears threatening to spill. I promise. He leaned forward, his forehead touching hers. Can I kiss you? Angela nodded, not trusting her voice. Bernard's lips touched hers gently, tentatively, like he was afraid she might break. But when she kissed him back, when she showed him she wasn't fragile, the kiss deepened into something that made her feel like she was coming home. They were interrupted by applause from the other diners, and Angela pulled back, laughing and blushing. Bernard grinned, unashamed and unrepentant. That was... She started. Perfect, he finished. I was going to say public. That too. He stood up, offering her his hand. Come on, let's get out of here before Mama Ruby starts planning our wedding. As they walked out of the restaurant, Angela felt lighter than she had in years. The autumn air was crisp and clean, and Bernard's hand was warm in hers. They walked slowly, neither wanting the afternoon to end. Your friends seem great, Bernard said, his arm around her waist. I was worried they wouldn't approve of me. Why wouldn't they approve? Angela asked, genuinely confused. Because I'm not a lawyer or doctor or some other professional. Because I work with my hands instead of my brain. Angela stopped walking and turned to face him. Bernard, you are the smartest, kindest, most wonderful man I've ever met. Anyone who can't see that is an idiot. I love you, he said, cupping her face in his hands. I love your passion, your intelligence, your strength. I love the way you fight for people who can't fight for themselves. You make me feel like I can conquer the world, Angela said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. Like I can do anything as long as you're beside me. You can, Bernard said against her lips. You proved that today. The kiss deepened, and Angela felt that familiar fire ignite in her belly. After 2 weeks of stolen kisses and heated glances, she was ready for more. Take me home, she whispered against his lips. Your place or mine? Bernard asked, his voice rough with desire. Yours, Angela said. I want to see where you live. 20 minutes later, Bernard was opening the door to a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood. Angela looked around, taking in the simple furniture, the worn but clean carpet, the small kitchen with older appliances. It's perfect, she said, and meant it. It feels like you. Honest and a little rough around the edges? Bernard asked. Warm and real and wonderful, Angela corrected, wrapping her arms around his neck. Their lovemaking was slow and tender, full of whispered endearments and gentle touches. Bernard worshipped her body like she was something precious, something sacred. He made her feel beautiful, desired, cherished in ways she'd never experienced. Afterward, they lay entwined in his bed, Angela's head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I've never felt like this before, she said softly, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. You are, Bernard said, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Promise me something, Angela said, tilting her head to look at him. Anything. Promise me we'll always be honest with each other. Promise me we'll always talk about things, even when it's hard. Bernard's body tensed slightly. I promise, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I promise I'll always be honest with you. Good, Angela said, settling back against his chest. Because I can't survive another relationship built on lies. As Angela drifted off to sleep, Bernard stared at the ceiling and felt his heart break. He wanted nothing more than to keep the promise he'd just made, but he was already living a lie so enormous it could destroy everything. He loved her more than life itself, and that love was going to cost him everything. Tonight he would hold her and pretend that love was enough to overcome any obstacle. Tomorrow he would find a way to tell her the truth, without losing her forever. Chapter 4. Building Dreams Together. Angela Morris had never believed in fairy tales until Bernard Ellison showed up at her door with a borrowed truck and a toolbox that looked like it had survived several construction sites. "You don't have to do this," she said, watching him survey her new apartment with the critical eye of a man who understood structure. "I can hire someone." "With what money?" Bernard asked, setting his toolbox down. "You just spent everything on legal fees." "I'll figure it out. I always do." Bernard turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "Angela, I'm here because I want to be. Because helping you brings me joy. Can you allow me that?" The truth was, she couldn't afford to hire anyone. Her savings were gone, her practice barely surviving, and this apartment was all she could afford. It was small, needed work, but it was hers. "Okay," she said finally. "But I'm helping." Bernard grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that. I brought you work clothes." He handed her a thrift store package. Inside were paint-stained jeans, a soft t-shirt, and worn work boots. "You bought me clothes?" she asked, touched. "I figured you needed something that wasn't connected to before." Bernard's voice was gentle. "Something completely yours." This man understood what she hadn't even realized, that she needed to build something new, something untainted by her past. "Thank you," she whispered. 20 minutes later, Angela emerged from her bedroom wearing the clothes. They fit perfectly, and she felt like a woman ready to build something beautiful. Bernard had already moved her furniture and laid out plastic sheeting. He'd changed into worn jeans and a flannel shirt that stretched across his shoulders in a way that made her pulse quicken. "Painting first," he said, opening paint cans. "I picked colors I thought you'd like. The samples were perfect. Soft sage green, warm cream, cheerful yellow. Exactly what she would have chosen if she'd had the luxury of choice." "How did you know?" she asked. "I pay attention." He handed her a brush. "You like things that feel like home, not a showroom." They worked in comfortable silence, the rhythm soothing. Angela found herself stealing glances at Bernard, admiring how he moved with quiet efficiency, humming under his breath. "What kind of construction do you do?" she asked. Bernard paused. "Different projects, residential mostly. I work for a small company. We handle whatever pays the bills." "Is that what you always wanted?" "No," he said after a moment. "I wanted to build things, design things that would last. You still could. You're smart, Bernard." "School costs money," he said, something sad in his voice. "There are scholarships. You could—" "My dad got sick when I was 18, cancer. I chose taking care of him over college." Bernard's voice was controlled. He was a good man who deserved better than dying alone. Angela's heart ached for him. "I'm sorry. It taught me what matters." He looked at her intently. "That money doesn't make people good or bad. It just makes them more of what they already are." She thought about all the wealthy men who had used their power to hurt people. Not everyone sees it that way. But you do. Bernard moved closer, close enough that she could smell paint and honest work on him. "That's one of the things I love about you." The word love hung between them. Looking into his eyes, she could see he meant it. "I know it's crazy," he said, setting down his brush and taking her face in his hands. "But I've never felt like this about anyone. You make me want to be better." "You're already amazing," she whispered. "Kiss me," he said, and it wasn't a request. Angela didn't hesitate. She kissed him, tasting paint and possibility. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened into something that made her knees weak. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "We should get back to painting," he said, voice rough with desire. "Probably," she agreed, but neither moved. "I'm not going anywhere," Bernard said seriously. "Whatever this becomes, I'm completely committed." "Even though I'm damaged?" she asked. You're not damaged, you're healing, and I want to be part of that healing. Tears pricked her eyes. I don't know how to let someone take care of me. We'll figure it out together. He kissed her forehead. One day at a time. They worked for hours, painting and talking. Bernard shared carefully edited stories about work, while Angela talked about law school and her dreams before Marcus tried to destroy them. By evening, the living room was transformed. The sage green walls felt warm and welcoming, the cream trim elegant. It looked like home. It's beautiful, Angela said in wonder. We make a good team, Bernard said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. I can see us doing this for years. Years? She turned in his arms. Decades, if you'll have me. This isn't casual for me, Angela. Not for me either. It's terrifying and wonderful. The best things usually are. They ordered pizza and ate, sitting on the floor. Angela shared her biggest dream, opening a legal clinic for women who couldn't afford lawyers. That's beautiful, Bernard said, genuine admiration in his voice. What's stopping you? Money. Time. The fact that I can barely keep my practice afloat. Those are just obstacles, not insurmountable ones. Easy to say when you don't have a dream that costs more than you could make in a lifetime. Bernard was quiet, then spoke carefully. What if you had help? Financial backing. From where? I don't have wealthy friends or family money. I'm just a girl from the projects who got lucky. There are grants, foundations, people who believe in causes like yours. Maybe someday, when I've proven myself. Why not now? Bernard asked. Why wait? Angela looked at this man who seemed to believe she could do anything. Because I'm scared. I've lost so much already. You won't lose, not with me beside you. I believe in you, Angela. I believe in us. Surrounded by evidence of their shared work, Angela felt real hope for the first time in years. Maybe she could have the life she'd always dreamed of. But Bernard Ellison, billionaire CEO pretending to be a working man, wondered how much longer he could maintain this deception. How long before she discovered he already had the power to make all her dreams come true? How long before she realized the man she was falling in love with was living a lie? Chapter 5. The Soul Connection. Angela Morris had never believed in soulmates until she watched Bernard Ellison hold her hand while she fell apart. She sat in her car outside the courthouse, her hands trembling as she clutched the case file that could change everything. Inside those manila folders was the story of Maria Santos, a young mother whose wealthy husband was trying to take her children away, claiming she was unfit because she couldn't afford the lifestyle he wanted for them. It was Angela's biggest case since the divorce, and she was terrified she'd fail. You can do this, she whispered to herself, but her voice sounded hollow in the empty car. You have to do this. Her phone buzzed with a text from Bernard. Bernard, how are you feeling about today? Angela, terrified. This case, it's everything I've been working toward, but what if I'm not good enough? What if I let her down? Bernard, you won't. You're the most brilliant lawyer I know. Angela, I'm the only lawyer you know. Bernard, that doesn't make it less true. You've got this, beautiful. I believe in you. Angela felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Over the past 2 weeks, Bernard had become her anchor, her safe harbor in a storm she hadn't even realized she was weathering. He brought her coffee in the mornings, stayed up late helping her prepare for cases, and held her when the weight of other people's pain became too much to bear. Angela, I love you. She typed the words before she could stop herself, then stared at the screen in horror. They hadn't said it yet, not out loud, not in text. The words hung there on her phone like a confession she wasn't ready to make. Her phone rang immediately. Angela, Bernard's voice was warm and rich, full of something that made her heart race. Do you mean that? I dot. She closed her eyes, taking a shaky breath. Yes, I mean it. I love you, Bernard. I know it's crazy. I know it's too soon. But I love you. Thank God, he said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. Because I love you too. I've been dying to say it, but I didn't want to scare you. You don't scare me, Angela said. You make me feel brave. Good, because you need to be brave today. You need to walk into that courthouse and show everyone what I already know. That you're magnificent. Angela felt tears prick her eyes. I wish you could be there with me. I'll be there, Bernard said immediately. I'll take the day off work. I'll be in the gallery, and every time you feel scared, you just look at me and remember that I love you. You can't take the day off, Angela protested. You'll lose money you can't afford to lose. Angela, Bernard's voice was firm. There is nothing more important to me than being there for you. Nothing. 2 hours later, Angela stood in front of the judge, her closing argument flowing from her lips like a prayer. She talked about Maria Santos, a woman who had given up her career to raise her children, who had been emotionally abused by a man who used his wealth as a weapon, who deserved the chance to rebuild her life with her children by her side. Your Honor, Angela said, her voice growing stronger with each word, this case isn't about money. It's about what kind of society we want to be. Do we want to be a society that says children belong with the parent who can buy them the most expensive toys? Or do we want to be a society that says children belong with the parent who loves them most? She caught Bernard's eye in the gallery, and the pride and love she saw there gave her the strength to continue. Maria Santos may not have millions of dollars, but she has something far more valuable. She has a mother's love. She has the courage to fight for her children even when the odds are stacked against her. She has the strength to rebuild her life from nothing, to create a home filled with love instead of fear. When the judge ruled in Maria's favor, Angela felt her knees nearly buckle with relief. She turned to find Bernard pushing through the crowd, his face radiant with joy and pride. You did it, he said, sweeping her into his arms. You were incredible. We did it, Angela corrected, holding him tight. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have, Bernard said, pulling back to look at her. But I'm glad you didn't have to. That evening, Angela's law school friends threw an impromptu celebration at their favorite bar. Angela had been nervous about introducing Bernard to her friends, worried about what they would think of her blue-collar boyfriend. But as she watched him charm her colleagues with his intelligence and humor, she realized her fears had been unfounded. I like him, her friend Jessica whispered, nudging Angela's shoulder. He's not what I expected. What did you expect? Angela asked, curious. I don't know. Someone trying too hard to impress us, I guess. Someone slick and calculating, but he's just genuine. And the way he looks at you. Jessica sighed dreamily. Girl, that man is completely gone for you. Angela glanced across the room to where Bernard was discussing construction projects with her friend David. He was wearing a thrift store suit that fit him perfectly, and he carried himself with a quiet confidence that made her heart race. He's nothing like Marcus, Angela said. No, he's not, Jessica agreed. Marcus always acted like he was doing you a favor by being with you. Bernard acts like he won the lottery. I'm scared, Angela admitted. Of what? Of how much I love him. Of how much I need him. Of what happens if he leaves. Jessica turned to face her fully. Angela, that man is not going anywhere. Trust me, I've seen a lot of relationships, and what you two have is rare. Don't let your past destroy your future. Later that night, Angela and Bernard walked slowly back to his truck, neither wanting the evening to end. The October air was crisp and clean, and Denver's skyline glittered in the distance. Your friends are great, Bernard said, his arm around her waist. I was worried they wouldn't approve of me. Why wouldn't they approve of you? Angela asked, genuinely confused. Because I'm not a lawyer or a doctor or some other professional. Because I work with my hands instead of my brain. Angela stopped walking and turned to face him. Bernard Ellison, you are the smartest, kindest, most wonderful man I've ever met. Anyone who can't see that is an idiot. I love you, he said, cupping her face in his hands. I love your passion, your intelligence, your strength. I love the way you fight for people who can't fight for themselves. I love the way you make me want to be better than I am. You make me feel like I can conquer the world, Angela said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. Like I can do anything as long as you're beside me. You can, Bernard said against her lips. You already proved that today. The kiss deepened, and Angela felt that familiar fire ignite in her belly. After 2 weeks of stolen kisses and heated glances, she was ready for more. She was ready for everything. Take me home, she whispered against his lips. Your place or mine? Bernard asked, his voice rough with desire. Yours, Angela said. I want to see where you live. Bernard hesitated for just a moment, and Angela caught the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. It's not much, he said finally. Just a small apartment. Nothing fancy. I don't need fancy, Angela said. I just need you. 20 minutes later, Bernard was opening the door to a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood. Angela looked around, taking in the simple furniture, the worn but clean carpet, the small kitchen with appliances that had seen better days. It's perfect, she said, and meant it. It feels like you. Honest and a little rough around the edges? Bernard asked with a self-deprecating smile. Warm and real and wonderful, Angela corrected, wrapping her arms around his neck. Just like you. Bernard carried her to his bedroom, and Angela's breath caught at the tenderness in his touch. He laid her gently on the bed, his eyes never leaving hers. Are you sure? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I've never been more sure of anything, Angela said, reaching up to touch his face. I love you, Bernard. I want to be with you completely. Their lovemaking was slow and sweet, full of whispered endearments and gentle touches. Bernard worshipped her body like she was something precious, something sacred. He made her feel beautiful, desired, cherished in ways she'd never experienced before. Afterward, they lay entwined in his bed, Angela's head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. I've never felt like this before, she said softly. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. You are, Bernard said, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Promise me something, Angela said, tilting her head to look at him. Anything. Promise me we'll always be honest with each other. Promise me we'll always talk about things, even when it's hard. Bernard's body tensed slightly, and Angela felt him take a deep breath. I promise, he said, and his voice was thick with emotion. I promise I'll always be honest with you. Good, Angela said, settling back against his chest, because I can't survive another relationship built on lies. As Angela drifted off to sleep in his arms, Bernard Ellison stared at the ceiling and felt his heart break. He wanted nothing more than to keep the promise he'd just made, but he was already living a lie so big it could destroy everything they'd built together. He loved her more than he'd ever loved anyone, and that love was going to cost him everything. But for now, with Angela safe in his arms and her breathing soft and even against his chest, he could pretend that Bernard Ellison, the construction worker, was real, that their love was built on truth instead of deception. For now, he could hold on to the illusion that he deserved the angel sleeping in his arms. Tomorrow, he would figure out how to tell her the truth without losing her forever. Tomorrow, he would find a way to make this right. Tonight, he would just hold her and pretend that love was enough to overcome any obstacle, even the obstacle of his own lies. Chapter 6. Paradise found. Angela Morris had never imagined that happiness could feel this terrifying. She stood in her apartment, staring at the weekend bag on her bed, her heart racing with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Bernard had surprised her with a weekend getaway, and for the first time in her life she was going away with a man she truly loved. "It's just camping," she told herself, but her reflection in the mirror looked skeptical. "It's not like he's taking you to Paris." The truth was, she wouldn't have wanted Paris. The fact that Bernard had planned something simple, something within his means, made it more precious than any expensive resort could have been. He was giving her what he could afford, and that meant everything to her. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Bernard, ready for our adventure. I'm downstairs. Angela, coming down now. I packed way too much for camping. Bernard, we'll figure it out. I love you. Angela, I love you too." The words still felt new on her tongue, still sent shivers down her spine every time she typed them. 3 weeks of loving Bernard Ellison, and she was still amazed that this beautiful, gentle man was hers. Angela grabbed her bag and headed downstairs, her heart fluttering with anticipation. She found Bernard leaning against his truck, and the sight of him made her breath catch. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, his hair slightly mussed from the wind, and he looked like every romantic fantasy she'd ever had. "Hi, beautiful," he said, pushing off from the truck to meet her. "Ready for our first official weekend away?" "I've never been camping," Angela admitted, letting him take her bag. "I have no idea what I'm doing." "That's what makes it perfect," Bernard said, kissing her softly. "We'll figure it out together." As they drove out of the city, Angela watched the urban landscape give way to rolling hills and golden aspens. Bernard had the radio tuned to a classic rock station, and he sang along under his breath, his voice rough and warm. She found herself staring at his profile, memorizing the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, catching her staring. "How happy I am," Angela said honestly. "How I never thought I could feel this way about anyone." "How do you feel?" Bernard asked, his voice soft. "Safe," Angela said, the word coming out before she could stop it. "Like I can be myself with you. Like I don't have to pretend to be someone else to keep you interested." Bernard's hands tightened on the steering wheel, and Angela caught the flash of something painful in his eyes. "You never have to pretend with me," he said. "I love you exactly as you are." "Good," Angela said, reaching over to touch his hand. "Because I'm tired of pretending. I spent 2 years pretending to be the kind of woman Marcus wanted, and it nearly destroyed me." "You're perfect," Bernard said, bringing her hand to his lips. "Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the autumn landscape flowing past the windows. Angela felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years, a contentment that went bone deep. This was what love was supposed to feel like, easy, natural, like coming home. "So where exactly are we going?" she asked as Bernard turned onto a dirt road. "It's a surprise," Bernard said, but there was something in his voice that made her look at him more closely. "I found this place online. It's supposed to be special." 20 minutes later, Angela understood what he meant. The campsite was like something out of a fairy tale, a clearing beside a crystal-clear lake, surrounded by aspen trees that glowed gold in the afternoon sunlight. There was a fire pit, a picnic table, and enough space for their tent, but they were completely alone. "Bernard," Angela breathed, climbing out of the truck. "This is incredible." "I hoped you'd like it," Bernard said, but she could hear the nervousness in his voice. "I know it's not fancy." "It's perfect," Angela said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "It's absolutely perfect." As they set up their tent, Angela couldn't help but notice how smoothly everything went. Bernard seemed to have thought of everything, Extra blankets, a cooler packed with her favorite foods, even a small camping stove for making coffee in the morning. "You really planned this out," she said, impressed by his thoroughness. "I wanted this to be special," Bernard said, his voice sincere. "I wanted to give you something beautiful." "You did," Angela said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. "You gave me you." That evening they sat by the fire, Angela nestled between Bernard's legs as they watched the flames dance against the darkening sky. The lake reflected the stars, and somewhere in the distance an owl called out into the night. "I could stay here forever," Angela said, leaning back against Bernard's chest. "So could I," Bernard said, his arms tightening around her. "Just you and me and all the time in the world." "Tell me about your dreams," Angela said suddenly. "Your real dreams, not the practical ones." Bernard was quiet for a long moment, his chin resting on top of her head. "I dream about building something lasting," he said finally, "something that matters. I dream about having a family, kids who grow up knowing they're loved. I dream about waking up every morning next to the woman I love and knowing that she loves me back." "What else?" Angela prompted, sensing there was more. "I dream about changing the world, even if it's just a little bit. About using whatever talents I have to make life better for people who need help." Bernard's voice grew passionate. "I dream about being the kind of man who deserves someone like you." "You already are that man," Angela said, turning in his arms to face him. "You're exactly the man I've been waiting for my whole life." "Am I?" Bernard asked, and there was something vulnerable in his voice that made her heart ache. "Yes," Angela said firmly. "You're kind and strong and honest. You work hard for what you have. You treat me like I'm precious. You make me feel like I'm worth fighting for." Bernard's eyes filled with tears and he pulled her closer. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes," he said. "I love you so much I don't know how I lived without you." "You don't have to live without me," Angela said, her own eyes filling with tears. "I'm not going anywhere, Bernard. I'm yours, completely." "Promise me," Bernard said, his voice urgent. "Promise me that when things get hard, when life gets complicated, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember how much we love each other." "I promise," Angela said, confused by the intensity in his voice. "But why are you talking like something's going to happen?" "Because I know how easy it is to lose the good things in life," Bernard said. "I know how quickly everything can change. I just want to make sure you know how much you mean to me." Angela kissed him then, pouring all her love and reassurance into the contact. "Nothing's going to change," she whispered against his lips. "We're going to be okay." They made love under the stars, their bodies moving together with a passion that felt sacred, eternal. Bernard worshipped her with his hands and his mouth, whispering words of love and adoration that made her feel like a goddess. When they finally came together, it was with a desperation that spoke of souls recognizing their perfect match. Afterward, they lay entwined in their sleeping bags, Angela's head on Bernard's chest, listening to the sound of the lake lapping against the shore. "I want to have your babies," Angela said suddenly, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Bernard's body went still beneath her. "What?" "I want to have your babies," Angela repeated, mortified but unable to take it back. "I want to build a life with you, a family. I want to wake up every morning for the rest of my life and know that you're mine." "Angela." Bernard's voice was thick with emotion. "I know it's too soon," Angela said quickly. "I know we haven't talked about it. But I love you so much, and I can't imagine my future without you in it." "I can't imagine my future without you either," Bernard said, his arms tightening around her. "I want all of that with you. The babies, the life, the forever." "Really?" Angela lifted her head to look at him. "Really," Bernard said, cupping her face in his hands. "I want to give you everything, Angela. Everything you've ever dreamed of." "I don't need everything," Angela said. I just need you. What if I could give you more? Bernard asked, his voice careful. What if I could help you start that legal clinic you talked about? What if I could help make your dreams come true? Angela frowned. How? You're a construction worker, Bernard. You don't have that kind of money. Maybe not now, Bernard said, but someday, when I've saved enough, when I've built up my business. You want to start your own business? Angela asked, surprised. Maybe, eventually, if I could find the right investors, the right backing. Bernard trailed off, and Angela could see him thinking. That's a beautiful dream, Angela said, but I don't love you for what you might have someday. I love you for who you are right now. I know, Bernard said, and his voice was heavy with something that sounded like regret. I just want to be able to give you the world. You already have, Angela said, settling back against his chest. You've given me love, respect, partnership. You've given me a reason to believe in happy endings again. As Angela drifted off to sleep in his arms, Bernard stared up at the star-filled sky and felt his heart breaking. Tomorrow they would drive back to the city, back to the lies and the deception. Tomorrow he would have to continue pretending to be someone he wasn't. But tonight, under the vast Colorado sky, with the woman he loved sleeping peacefully in his arms, Bernard Ellison allowed himself to believe that love could conquer anything, even the truth. He closed his eyes and made a silent vow. He would find a way to tell Angela the truth without losing her. He would find a way to make this right. He had to. Because the alternative, a life without Angela Morris, was unthinkable. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a plan began to form. A way to gradually reveal his true identity, to show her that the man she loved was real, even if the circumstances weren't. Tomorrow he would start telling her the truth. Tomorrow he would begin to make this right. Tonight he would just hold her and pretend that love was enough to overcome any obstacle, even the obstacle of his own deception. Chapter 7. The Weight of Truth. Angela Morris had never believed in perfect moments until she found herself dancing in Bernard Ellison's arms in the middle of her apartment, with nothing but candlelight and the sound of rain against the windows. I still can't believe you got a promotion, she said, her head resting against his chest as they swayed to the music playing from her phone. Tell me everything. Bernard's arms tightened around her, and she felt the subtle tension in his body. It's not that exciting, he said, his voice carefully casual. Just a step up in responsibility. My boss noticed my work quality and offered me a supervisor position. More money? Angela asked, tilting her head to look at him. Some, Bernard said, and she could see the conflict in his eyes. Enough that I was thinking, maybe we could talk about moving in together. Angela's heart skipped a beat. Moving in together. I know it's fast, Bernard said quickly, but I love you, Angela. I love waking up next to you. I love coming home to you. I love the way you make even the simplest things feel extraordinary. I love you too, Angela said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. And yes, I want to move in with you. I want to build a life with you. There's something I need to tell you, Bernard said, his voice serious. Something important. Angela felt a chill run down her spine. What is it? Bernard led her to the couch, his hands never leaving hers. Angela, this promotion, it comes with opportunities, possibilities I hadn't considered before. What do you mean? I mean, I might have chances now to grow, to build something bigger. Bernard's voice was careful, measured. I might be able to help you start that legal clinic sooner than we thought. Angela frowned. Bernard, what exactly is this promotion? Are you talking about becoming a foreman or something? Something like that, Bernard said, and she could see him struggling with his words. Angela, what if I told you that I might have more potential than I originally thought? What do you mean? Angela's voice was sharper now, fear creeping in around the edges. I mean, what if I had access to resources I hadn't mentioned? What if I could actually help you with your dreams? Angela pulled her hands away from his, her heart starting to race. Are you telling me you've been lying to me about money? Not lying, Bernard said quickly. Just not telling you everything. That's the same thing, Angela said, standing up and pacing to the window. Bernard, I told you from the beginning that I can't survive another relationship built on lies. I know, Bernard said, his voice full of anguish. I know, and I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you, but I was scared of losing you. So you thought lying was better? Angela turned to face him, her eyes blazing. You thought deceiving me was the way to build trust? No, Bernard said, standing up and reaching for her. I thought if you knew the truth, you'd think I was just another rich man trying to buy your affection. The truth about what? Angela demanded. How rich are you, Bernard? Because construction workers don't get promoted to the kind of money you're talking about. Bernard opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. Angela watched the war playing out on his face, saw the moment when he made his decision. You're right, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. The promotion is good, but it's not life-changing money. I just want to be able to give you more than I can right now. Angela studied his face, sensing there was more he wasn't telling her. Bernard, are you being honest with me? Yes, Bernard said, and she could hear the lie in his voice. I'm being honest with you. Then why do I feel like you're still hiding something? Bernard crossed the room to her, taking her face in his hands. Because I love you so much that I sometimes dream bigger than reality allows. Because I want to give you everything you deserve, and right now, I can't. Angela searched his eyes, looking for the truth. What she saw there was love, fear, and something that looked like desperation. But she also saw the man she'd fallen in love with, the gentle, hard-working man who had saved her from falling and claimed her as his own. I don't need you to give me everything, she said softly. I just need you to be honest with me. I am being honest with you, Bernard said, and this time the lie came easier. I love you, Angela, more than I've ever loved anyone. That's the only truth that matters. Angela wanted to push, wanted to demand answers to the questions that were nagging at her. But looking into Bernard's eyes, seeing the love and vulnerability there, she found herself nodding. Okay, she said. I believe you. Thank you, Bernard said, pulling her into his arms. Thank you for trusting me. I do trust you, Angela said, even as a small voice in her head whispered warnings. I love you, Bernard. I love you exactly as you are, not rich, not poor, just perfect. The words hit Bernard like a physical blow. He closed his eyes, holding her tighter, and felt his heart break completely. She loved him exactly as he was, which meant she loved a lie. She loved Bernard Ellison, the construction worker, not Bernard Ellison, the billionaire CEO. I love you too, he whispered, and meant it with every fiber of his being. I love you so much it terrifies me. Don't be terrified, Angela said, pulling back to look at him. We're going to be okay. We're going to build something beautiful together. Are we? Bernard asked, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, Angela said firmly. We are, because we love each other and we're honest with each other and we want the same things. Bernard nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Angela loved him for who he pretended to be, and every day he continued the charade was another day he betrayed that love. Let's celebrate, Angela said, her mood brightening. Your promotion, our future, us. How do you want to celebrate? Bernard asked, grateful for the change of subject. Cook me dinner, Angela said with a smile. Something simple and perfect, just like you. In the kitchen, they moved together with the easy rhythm of partners who had learned each other's movements. Bernard cooked while Angela opened wine, and they talked about their future like it was a certainty, like nothing could tear them apart. "I want to marry you," Bernard said suddenly, the words coming out before he could stop them. Angela nearly dropped her wine glass. "What?" "I want to marry you," Bernard repeated, turning to face her. "I know it's too soon, I know we haven't talked about it, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. I want to wake up every morning for the rest of my life and know that you're mine." "Bernard," Angela's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't have a ring yet," Bernard said, his words tumbling out in a rush. "I can't afford the kind of ring you deserve, but I'm saving up. I'm going to buy you something beautiful, something that shows the world how much I love you." Angela set down her wine glass and crossed the room to him. "I don't need an expensive ring," she said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I just need you." "Is that a yes?" Bernard asked, his heart pounding. "That's a yes," Angela said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Bernard kissed her then, pouring all his love and desperation into the contact. She tasted like wine and tears and forever, and he knew he would never love anyone the way he loved her. "I promise I'll be a good husband," he said against her lips. "I promise I'll take care of you, protect you, love you for the rest of my life." "I promise the same," Angela said. "I promise I'll love you exactly as you are, forever." The words were like a knife to his heart. She was promising to love a lie, and he was letting her. But looking into her eyes, seeing the joy and love there, he couldn't bring himself to destroy her happiness. Not tonight. Tonight he would let her believe in their fairy tale. Tonight he would hold her and make love to her, and pretend that their future was built on truth instead of deception. They made love with a passion that bordered on desperate, as if they were both trying to prove something to each other. Bernard worshipped her body with his hands and his mouth, memorizing every curve, every sound she made. Angela gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back, trusting him with her heart and her body and her future. Afterward, they lay entwined in her bed, Angela's head on his chest, her engagement ring finger tracing lazy patterns on his skin. "I can't wait to be your wife," she said softly. "I can't wait to build a life with you." "What kind of life do you want?" Bernard asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Simple," Angela said. "A little house somewhere, maybe a garden. Children who grow up knowing they're loved. Sunday mornings in bed, quiet evenings together. Nothing fancy, just real." "That sounds perfect," Bernard said, and meant it. "That sounds like everything I've ever wanted." "Good," Angela said, pressing a kiss to his chest, "because that's what we're going to have. You and me against the world." "You and me," Bernard agreed, but his voice was heavy with the weight of secrets. As Angela drifted off to sleep in his arms, Bernard stared at the ceiling and felt the full weight of his deception crushing down on him. He had been about to tell her the truth, had been ready to confess everything, but her words had stopped him cold. She loved him exactly as he was. She loved Bernard Ellison, the construction worker, not Bernard Ellison, the billionaire. And now she was going to marry him, build a life with him, have his children, all based on a lie so fundamental that it poisoned everything they shared. He had to tell her the truth. But how could he destroy the happiness in her eyes? How could he risk losing the only real love he'd ever known? Tomorrow, he told himself, tomorrow he would find a way to make this right. Tonight, he would just hold her and pretend that love was enough to overcome any obstacle, even the obstacle of his own cowardice. But deep in his heart, Bernard Ellison knew that tomorrow would bring the same fear, the same excuses, the same lies. And each day he stayed silent was another day he betrayed the woman he loved more than life itself. the woman who was going to marry a man who didn't exist. Chapter 8. The Devastating Truth. Angela Morris had never believed in perfect happiness until it was ripped away from her in the space of a single news report. She was sitting in her favorite coffee shop, reviewing case files for the morning, when she glanced up at the television mounted on the wall. The volume was low, but she could see the headlines scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Tech mogul Bernard Ellison receives humanitarian award for educational initiatives. Her heart stopped. The man on the screen was wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his hair styled flawlessly, his smile confident and polished. He was standing at a podium, accepting an award from the governor of Colorado, surrounded by Denver's elite. He looked like money, power, privilege, everything she had been taught to distrust. He looked exactly like Bernard, her Bernard. But it couldn't be. Her Bernard was a construction worker who wore thrift store clothes and worried about bus fare. Her Bernard was honest and humble and real. The man on the screen was Bernard Ellison, CEO of Ellison Technologies, worth an estimated $2.8 billion. Angela's coffee cup slipped from her numb fingers, shattering on the floor and sending hot liquid splashing across her shoes. She stared at the screen, watching the man she loved, the man she was engaged to marry, shake hands with politicians and business leaders like he belonged in their world. Because he did belong in their world. The coffee shop around her seemed to fade away as the truth crashed over her like a devastating wave. Every moment they'd shared, every kiss, every "I love you," it had all been a lie. The camping trip that had seemed so perfect because Bernard had found the ideal campsite, the way he always seemed to have exactly what they needed, exactly when they needed it. The tools that were too high quality for a construction worker, the knowledge that went beyond manual labor. She had been so naive, so desperate to believe in love that she had ignored every warning sign. Angela ran from the coffee shop, her vision blurred by tears, her chest tight with the kind of pain that made it hard to breathe. She drove through the streets of Denver in a daze, running red lights and ignoring the honking horns of other drivers. She had to get to him. She had to look him in the eye and hear him try to explain away this betrayal. The address she found online led her to a gleaming downtown high-rise that screamed money and power. The Ellison Technologies building was a monument to success, its glass and steel facade reflecting the Denver skyline like a mirror. Angela sat in her car across the street, staring up at the building, feeling smaller and more insignificant than she had ever felt in her life. Her phone buzzed with a text from Bernard. "Bernard, good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you tonight. I love you." Angela stared at the message, her hands shaking. Even now, even after she knew the truth, he was still lying to her, still pretending to be someone he wasn't. She typed back with trembling fingers. "Angela, I know who you are." Her phone rang immediately. "Angela, let me explain." Bernard's voice was panicked, desperate. "Please, just let me explain." "Explain what?" Angela's voice was eerily calm. "Explain how you've been lying to me for months. Explain how you made me fall in love with someone who doesn't exist." "I never lied about loving you," Bernard said, his voice breaking. "That was never a lie, Angela. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone." "Where are you?" Angela asked. I'm at work. Angela, please don't." "I'm outside your building," Angela said, and hung up. 15 minutes later, Angela stood in the marble lobby of Ellison Technologies, feeling like an alien in her simple dress and modest heels. Everyone around her screamed wealth and privilege, the security guards in their expensive suits, the receptionist with her perfect makeup and designer clothes, the executives who walked past her like she was invisible. "Miss Morris." A woman in an immaculate business suit approached her. "Mr. Ellison is waiting for you in his private elevator." Angela followed the woman across the lobby, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. The private elevator was a work of art, polished brass and rich wood, with a control panel that required a key card to operate. As they rose to the top floor, Angela watched the city shrink below them, and she felt like she was ascending to another world entirely. The elevator opened directly into Bernard's office, and Angela's breath caught in her throat. The space was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the Rocky Mountains. The furniture was obviously expensive, the artwork on the walls worth more than most people made in a year. And in the center of it all stood Bernard, no longer the humble construction worker she had fallen in love with. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, his hair perfectly styled, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. He looked like he belonged in this world of wealth and power. He looked like a stranger. "Angela," he said, his voice full of anguish, "thank you for coming." "Don't," Angela said, her voice sharp as a blade. "Don't thank me. Don't act like this is some kind of reunion." "Please, let me explain," Bernard said, taking a step toward her. "I can explain everything." "Can you?" Angela's voice was deceptively calm. "Can you explain how you've been lying to me since the moment we met? Can you explain how you made me believe you were something you're not?" "I never lied about the important things," Bernard said desperately. "I never lied about loving you, about wanting to build a life with you." "You lied about everything." Angela's composure finally cracked, her voice rising to a shout. "You lied about who you are, what you do, where you live. You made me believe you were struggling financially while you're worth billions." "I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I have," Bernard said, his own voice rising. "I wanted you to love me, not my bank account." "I don't even know who you are," Angela screamed. "The man I fell in love with doesn't exist. He's a character you created to manipulate me." "That's not true," Bernard said, his voice breaking. "The man you fell in love with is me, the real me. The money doesn't change that." "Doesn't it?" Angela laughed bitterly. "You think I'm some kind of gold digger? You think I can't tell the difference between love and manipulation?" "No," Bernard said quickly. "I never thought that. I know you're not like that." "Then why?" Angela's voice was raw with pain. "Why did you lie to me? Why did you make me believe you were someone else?" Bernard ran his hands through his hair, destroying the perfect styling. "Because I was scared. Because every other woman I've ever met has wanted me for my money. Because I thought if you knew the truth, you'd reject me." "So you decided to lie to me instead," Angela said, her voice hollow. "You decided to build our entire relationship on deception." "I fell in love with you," Bernard said, tears streaming down his face. "I fell in love with you, and I didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing you." "And now you've lost me anyway," Angela said, her voice eerily calm. "Congratulations, Bernard. You've managed to destroy the only real thing in your life." "Don't say that," Bernard pleaded, reaching for her. "Please, Angela, I love you. I love you so much, it's killing me." "Don't touch me," Angela said, backing away from him. "Don't ever touch me again." "Angela, please," Bernard begged. "I know I screwed up. I know I should have told you the truth from the beginning. But I love you, and I know you love me too." "I loved a lie," Angela said, her voice breaking. "I loved someone who doesn't exist." "I exist," Bernard said desperately. "I'm real, Angela. My feelings for you are real." "Are they?" Angela's voice was sharp with pain. "Or is this just another game to you? Another way to entertain yourself with the poor black girl who didn't know any better?" "How can you say that?" Bernard's voice was anguished. "How can you even think that?" "Because you're just like him," Angela said, her voice cold as ice. "You're just like Richard Sterling. You're just like every other wealthy man who thinks he can play with people's lives for his own amusement." "I'm nothing like him," Bernard said, his voice shaking with emotion. I love you, Angela. I want to marry you, build a life with you. With your construction worker persona? Angela laughed bitterly. Or with the real Bernard Ellison, because I don't know which one proposed to me. Both, Bernard said desperately. They're both me, Angela. The money doesn't change who I am inside. The money changes everything, Angela said, her voice final. The money means you had the power to destroy me, and you chose to use it. I never wanted to hurt you, Bernard said, his voice breaking. I only wanted to love you. Well, congratulations, Angela said, pulling the engagement ring from her finger. You've succeeded in doing both. She threw the ring at his feet, and it skittered across the polished marble floor like a discarded toy. Bernard dropped to his knees, scrambling to pick it up, his perfect suit forgotten. Angela, please, he begged, the ring clutched in his palm. Don't do this. Don't throw away what we have. We don't have anything, Angela said, her voice hollow. We never did. It was all a lie. It wasn't a lie, Bernard said, still on his knees. My love for you was never a lie. Your love, Angela's voice was bitter. You don't love me, Bernard. You love the idea of me. You love the fantasy of the grateful poor girl who fell for your act. That's not true, Bernard said, struggling to his feet. I love you. I love your strength, your intelligence, your passion. I love the way you fight for what's right. I love the way you make me want to be better than I am. Then why didn't you trust me with the truth? Angela asked, her voice breaking. If you really loved me, why didn't you trust me enough to be honest? Bernard opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. Because the truth was he hadn't trusted her. He had been so afraid of losing her that he had never given her the chance to accept him for who he really was. I was scared, he said finally. I was scared of losing you. And now you have, Angela said, tears streaming down her face. Now you've lost me anyway, and you've destroyed any chance we might have had. There has to be a way to fix this, Bernard said desperately. There has to be a way to make this right. There is no way to fix this, Angela said, her voice final. You can't build a relationship on lies and expect it to last. Angela, please, Bernard begged one last time. I love you. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. Please don't leave me. Angela looked at him one last time. This man who had saved her, loved her, and ultimately destroyed her. He was still beautiful, still the man whose touch had made her feel alive. But he was also a stranger, a billionaire who had been playing dress-up in her world. Goodbye, Bernard, she said quietly. I hope you find whatever it is you're really looking for. She turned and walked toward the elevator, her back straight, her head held high. Even in her pain, even in her devastation, she was still a queen. Angela, Bernard called after her, his voice breaking. Angela, please. But the elevator doors closed between them, and Angela Morris disappeared from Bernard Ellison's life as suddenly as she had entered it. Bernard stood alone in his office, the engagement ring clutched in his fist, and felt his world crumble around him. He had everything money could buy: power, success, influence. But he had lost the only thing that had ever mattered. He had lost his queen. And as he stood there, surrounded by the trappings of his wealth, Bernard Ellison realized that he had never been more poor in his life. Chapter 9. Hearts in Exile. 3 months. 3 months since Angela Morris had walked out of Bernard Ellison's life, and he was slowly dying without her. Bernard sat in his penthouse office at 2 a.m., staring at the city lights through floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of whiskey untouched on his desk. The Denver skyline that had once filled him with pride now looked cold and empty, like everything else in his life. He had tried to return to his old routine: board meetings, business dinners, charity galas. But everything felt hollow, meaningless. The success that had once driven him now felt like a prison, and every day without Angela was another day of serving a life sentence. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. "Sarah, the foundation paperwork is ready for your signature. The Angela Morris Foundation for Women's Legal Aid will be officially launched next week." Bernard stared at the message, his chest tight with pain. The foundation was his attempt at redemption, his way of honoring the woman he'd lost. He had endowed it with $50 million, enough to provide free legal services to women across Colorado. It was everything Angela had ever dreamed of, and she would never know it existed. He typed back with trembling fingers. "Bernard, make sure the donor remains anonymous. Angela can never know the money came from me. Sarah, are you sure about that? She might. Bernard, I'm sure. She made it clear she wants nothing to do with me or my money." Bernard set his phone aside and picked up the framed photo from his desk, the only picture he had of Angela, taken on their camping trip. She was laughing at something he'd said, her face radiant with joy and love. It had been the happiest moment of his life. Now it was just a reminder of everything he'd lost. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, expecting his security guard. Instead, Marcus Hartford walked into his office, his expensive suit wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. Angela's ex-husband looked like he hadn't slept in days. "What the hell do you want?" Bernard asked, his voice dangerous. "I want to talk to you about Angela," Marcus said, his voice slurred with alcohol. "I want to know what you did to her." Bernard stood up slowly, his hands clenched into fists. "I don't owe you any explanations." "She's destroyed," Marcus said, swaying slightly. "I saw her at the courthouse yesterday. She looks like a ghost, like someone drained all the life out of her." "Get out," Bernard said, his voice low and threatening. "What did you do to her?" Marcus demanded. "She was getting better, she was happy, and then you came along and ruined everything." "I ruined everything," Bernard laughed bitterly. "You cheated on her, tried to steal her business, and made her feel worthless. I loved her." "Did you?" Marcus's voice was sharp with pain. "Because the woman I saw yesterday doesn't look like someone who was loved. She looks like someone who was destroyed." The words hit Bernard like physical blows. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know that I made mistakes," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I know that I hurt her, and I know that I lost the most incredible woman I've ever known. But at least I never lied to her about who I was." "You lied to her every day," Bernard said, his voice shaking with rage. "You lied when you promised to love her, when you promised to be faithful, when you promised to build a life with her." "And you lied about everything," Marcus shot back. "You made her believe you were someone else entirely. You made her fall in love with a fiction." "I made her fall in love with me," Bernard said desperately. "The real me. The money doesn't change who I am." "Doesn't it?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "You think I don't know what it's like to have money? You think I don't know how it changes everything? You had the power to give her everything she ever wanted, and instead you chose to lie to her." "I was protecting her," Bernard said, but the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. "From what? From being loved by someone who could actually give her the world?" Marcus shook his head. "You were protecting yourself, not her. You were too much of a coward to risk rejection." "Get out," Bernard said again, his voice barely controlled. "I'm going to win her back," Marcus said, his voice suddenly steady. "I'm going to prove to her that I've changed, that I can be the man she deserves." "She'll never take you back," Bernard said, but there was fear in his voice now. "Won't she?" Marcus smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "At least I never pretended to be someone else. At least she knows exactly who I am." After Marcus left, Bernard sat back down at his desk, the man's words echoing in his mind. The truth was, he was terrified that Marcus was right, terrified that Angela would eventually forgive her ex-husband's honest betrayal more easily than she would forgive Bernard's loving deception. Across town, Angela Morris stood in her apartment, staring at the walls that Bernard had painted with such care. The sage green that had once made her feel peaceful now felt like a prison, a constant reminder of happiness she'd lost. She had tried to paint over it, to erase every trace of him from her life. But every time she picked up a brush, she remembered the way he had looked at her while they worked together, the way he had made her feel loved. Her phone rang. Marcus. Again. "What do you want?" she answered. "I want to see you," he said, his voice gentler than she'd heard it in years. "I want to talk. We have nothing to talk about. We have everything to talk about. Angela, I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible mistakes. But I also know that watching you destroy yourself over another man is killing me." "You don't get to care about my pain," Angela said sharply. "You lost that right when you cheated on me." "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," Marcus said quietly. "But I need you to know something. I've been sober for 3 months. I've been in therapy. I've been trying to understand why I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me." Angela was quiet, surprised by his honesty. "The truth is, I was scared," Marcus continued. "Scared of how much I needed you. Scared of not being worthy of you. So I sabotaged it before you could leave me. I know that's not an excuse, but it's the truth." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I see you making the same mistake I did. You're so afraid of being hurt that you're pushing away the man who loves you." "Bernard lied to me about everything," Angela said. "I lied to you too," Marcus said. "I lied every time I said I was working late when I was with another woman. I lied when I said I loved you while I was destroying our marriage. At least he lied because he was afraid of losing you. I lied because I was afraid of keeping you." Angela felt tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how to trust anyone anymore." "Then don't trust me," Marcus said. "Don't trust him. But don't give up on the possibility of love because 2 men were too scared to deserve you." After she hung up, Angela sat in her apartment, surrounded by memories of Bernard. She had loved him completely, honestly, with every fiber of her being. And he had lied to her about everything that mattered. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep, she found herself remembering the way he had looked at her, the way he had touched her, the way he had made her feel like the most precious thing in the world. Those moments had felt real, even if everything else was a lie. Had they been real? Or had she just been a gullible fool, blinded by loneliness and desperation? The next morning, Angela's assistant knocked on her office door. "There's someone here to see you," Jessica said, her voice strange. "She says it's about a job opportunity." The woman who walked into Angela's office was impeccably dressed, with silver hair and kind eyes. She looked like money, but not the cold, calculating kind that Angela had learned to fear. "Ms. Morris," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm Catherine Williams, director of the Angela Morris Foundation for Women's Legal Aid." Angela stared at her. "I'm sorry. What?" "The foundation," Catherine repeated. "We've been trying to reach you for weeks. We have a very generous donor who wants to fund a legal clinic in your name." "I don't understand," Angela said, her mind reeling. "What foundation? What donor?" "The donor wishes to remain anonymous," Catherine said, pulling out a thick folder. "But they've provided $50 million to start a legal aid clinic, exactly like the one you described in your interview with Denver Legal Magazine." Angela felt the world tilt around her. $50 million. Yes, the donor was very specific about wanting to honor your work, your dedication to helping women who can't afford legal representation. Angela's hands were shaking as she opened the folder. Inside were incorporation papers, building contracts, hiring agreements. Everything needed to start the clinic she had always dreamed of. "Who is the donor?" she asked, though she already knew. "I'm afraid I can't tell you that," Catherine said, "but I can tell you that they believe deeply in your mission, and they want nothing in return except to see you succeed." Angela stared at the papers, her vision blurring with tears. Even after everything, even after she had walked away from him, Bernard was still trying to take care of her, still trying to make her dreams come true. "I can't accept this," she said, her voice breaking. "Why not?" Catherine asked, genuinely confused. "This is everything you've ever wanted." "Because it's not real," Angela said, pushing the folder away. "It's just another lie, another manipulation." "Miss Morris," Catherine said gently, "I don't know what happened between you and the donor, but I can tell you that this foundation is real. The money is real. The opportunity to help thousands of women is real." Angela looked at the papers again, her heart breaking. This was everything she had ever wanted, handed to her on a silver platter. But it came from the man who had lied to her about everything, and accepting it would mean accepting that their relationship had been built on deception. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Of course," Catherine said, standing up. "But please don't take too long. There are women out there who need your help." After Catherine left, Angela sat in her office, staring at the folder. Inside those papers was the chance to help thousands of women, to make a real difference in the world. But it also represented everything she had lost. The dreams she had shared with Bernard, the future they had planned together. Could she accept his money without accepting his lies? Could she separate the gift from the giver? Or would taking his money mean admitting that she had been wrong to walk away? 3 months of heartbreak had taught her one thing. Love was more complicated than she had ever imagined. And sometimes the people who hurt you most were the ones who loved you best. But was love enough to overcome betrayal? Was forgiveness possible when the wound was still bleeding? As Angela sat in her office, surrounded by the evidence of Bernard's love and his deception, she realized that she was about to make the most important decision of her life. Accept the foundation and risk opening her heart to the man who had shattered it, or reject it and lose the chance to fulfill her life's work. Either way, she would have to decide whether love was worth the risk of being hurt again, whether Bernard Ellison deserved a second chance, whether she deserved to be happy, even if it meant forgiving the unforgivable. The folder sat on her desk like a challenge, and Angela Morris, the woman who had never backed down from a fight, found herself facing the biggest battle of her life, the battle for her own heart. Chapter 10. The Queen Reclaims Her Kingdom. Angela Morris had never believed in second chances until she spent 3 weeks watching her mother die, and in those final days heard truths that changed everything. "I've been thinking about that young man of yours," her mother said one afternoon, her voice weak but her eyes sharp. "The one who lied to you." Angela stiffened. "I don't want to talk about Bernard. I know you don't. But I need to." Her mother struggled to sit up. "Because I see myself in you, baby. I see the same pride, the same fear. It's not the same thing, Mama. Isn't it?" Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "I never told you the whole truth about Richard Sterling." Angela's heart clenched. "What truth?" "He didn't leave because you were too dark," her mother said, her voice breaking. "He left because I was too scared to forgive him." "What do you mean?" "When his friends made those awful comments about you, Richard was furious. He defended us, cut those people out of his life. But I was so hurt, so angry, that I couldn't see past my own pain. I told him that if he really loved us, he would have protected us from ever hearing those words." Angela felt the world shift. "But he tried to make it right. He wanted to marry me, adopt you legally, make you his daughter in every way that mattered. But I was so afraid of being hurt again that I pushed him away first. Mama, For 2 years he tried to come back. He called, he wrote, he sent money for your education. But I was too proud to answer, too scared to trust that he really meant it when he said he loved us. Her mother gripped Angela's hand. I threw away the love of my life because I was afraid of being vulnerable. Angela felt tears streaming down her face. Why are you telling me this now? Because I don't want you to make the same mistake I did. I don't want you to spend 30 years alone, wondering what if. Her mother's voice grew urgent. That young man of yours, he lied about money, not about love. Just like I lied about why Richard left. We both let fear make us stupid. I don't know how to forgive him. You start by admitting you're scared. Then you decide if love is worth the risk of being hurt again. Her mother's voice was fading. What if you're wrong about him? What if he really loves you as much as you love him? Her mother died 2 days later, and Angela sat by her bedside, holding her hand and finally understanding the weight of regret. Her mother had lived 30 years alone, and she had died wishing she'd been brave enough to trust love. Angela didn't want to live with that same regret. 3 days later, Angela stood outside the Ellison Technologies building, her heart pounding like a drum. She had been standing there for 20 minutes, trying to work up the courage to go inside. The foundation paperwork was in her bag, signed and ready to be filed. She had decided to accept Bernard's gift, not because she forgave him, but because she refused to let their broken relationship prevent her from helping other women. But now, looking up at the building where she had confronted him 6 months ago, she realized that she had come here for a different reason entirely. She had come here to fight for her love. The security guard recognized her from her previous visit and waved her toward the private elevator. Angela's hands were shaking as she pressed the button for the top floor, her heart racing with every floor they passed. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into Bernard's office and felt her breath catch. He was standing at the window, his back to her, wearing the same kind of expensive suit she had seen him in before. But something was different. His shoulders were slumped, his posture defeated, and even from behind she could see the exhaustion in every line of his body. "Hello, Bernard," she said softly. He spun around, his eyes wide with shock. "Angela?" She had forgotten how beautiful he was. 6 months of separation had dimmed her memory of his stormy blue eyes, the strong line of his jaw, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I signed the foundation papers," she said, pulling them out of her bag. "I wanted to thank you." "You don't need to thank me," Bernard said, his voice hoarse. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning." "Yes, you should have," Angela said, stepping closer. "You should have trusted me." "I know," Bernard said, his voice breaking. "I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness." "You're right," Angela said, and she saw him flinch. "You don't deserve my forgiveness. You lied to me about everything. You made me fall in love with someone who didn't exist." "Angela, I'm not finished," she said, her voice firm. "You made me believe that love could be simple, honest, real. You made me believe that I could trust someone completely, and then you showed me that it was all a lie." Bernard's face crumpled, and Angela saw tears streaming down his cheeks. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Angela. I love you so much, and I destroyed everything." "Did you?" Angela asked, her voice softer now. "Did you destroy everything?" Bernard looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, did you lie about loving me?" "Never," Bernard said immediately. "I never lied about that." "Did you lie about wanting to build a life with me?" "No," Bernard said, his voice stronger now. "I meant every word." "Did you lie about who you are inside? About your values, your dreams, your heart?" Bernard stared at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. "No," he said quietly. I never lied about who I am inside." "Then maybe you didn't destroy everything," Angela said, stepping closer. "Maybe you just made some very stupid decisions." "Angela," Bernard said, his voice full of hope and fear. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I've spent 6 months hating you for lying to me," Angela said. "And I've spent 6 months missing you so much I could barely breathe." "I've missed you too," Bernard said, his voice breaking. "Every day, every night. I've missed you so much I thought I was going crazy." "My mother died," Angela said suddenly. "Oh, Angela," Bernard said, instinctively reaching for her. "I'm so sorry." "When?" "3 days ago," Angela said, letting him take her hands. "She told me something before she died. She told me that she threw away the love of her life because she was too proud to forgive him." "Angela?" "She lived 30 years alone because she was too afraid to trust love again," Angela said, tears streaming down her face. "She died regretting that choice." "I'm so sorry," Bernard said, pulling her closer. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that alone." "I don't want to live with regret," Angela said, looking into his eyes. "I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had been brave enough to forgive you." "What are you saying?" Bernard asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm saying that I love you," Angela said, her voice strong and clear. "I love you, Bernard Ellison. Not your money, not your success, not your power. I love you. The man who caught me when I fell, who held me when I cried, who made me believe in love again." "I love you too," Bernard said, cupping her face in his hands. "I love you so much, Angela. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone." "I know," Angela said, smiling through her tears. "I can see it in your eyes. I could always see it in your eyes." "Can you forgive me?" Bernard asked, his voice full of hope and fear. "Can you forgive me for lying to you?" "I can forgive you," Angela said, "if you can promise me something." "Anything," Bernard said immediately. "Promise me that you'll never lie to me again," Angela said. "Promise me that you'll trust me with the truth, even when it's hard." "I promise," Bernard said, his voice solemn. "I promise I'll never lie to you again. I promise I'll trust you with everything." "And promise me that you'll love me exactly as I am," Angela said. "Not as some fantasy, not as some ideal, but as the real, complicated, imperfect woman I am." "I promise," Bernard said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise I'll love you exactly as you are for the rest of my life." "Then I can forgive you," Angela said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. "I can forgive you, and I can love you, and I can build a life with you." Bernard kissed her then, pouring 6 months of longing and regret and hope into the contact. Angela kissed him back, tasting tears and forgiveness and the promise of a future together. "Marry me," Bernard said against her lips. "Marry me, Angela. Be my wife, my partner, my everything." "Yes," Angela said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I'll marry you." Bernard dropped to his knees, pulling a ring box from his pocket. "I've been carrying this for 6 months," he said, opening it to reveal the most beautiful ring Angela had ever seen. "I bought it the day after you left, hoping that someday I'd get the chance to give it to you." "It's perfect," Angela said, holding out her hand. "It's absolutely perfect." As Bernard slipped the ring onto her finger, Angela looked down at him and saw her future in his eyes. She saw laughter and tears, arguments and reconciliations, children and grandchildren, and a love that would last a lifetime. "I have one more thing to tell you," Bernard said, standing up and wrapping his arms around her. "What's that?" "I'm stepping down as CEO," Bernard said. "I'm going to focus on the foundation, on using my money to help people. I want to be the man you fell in love with, the man who builds things that matter." "You don't have to do that for me," Angela said. "I'm not doing it for you," Bernard said, smiling. "I'm doing it for us. I'm doing it because I want to be worthy of your love." "You're already worthy," Angela said, pulling him closer. "You've always been worthy." 6 months later, Angela Morris became Angela Ellison in a ceremony that made the society pages for all the right reasons. She wore her mother's wedding dress. Bernard wore a simple black tuxedo, and they exchanged vows that brought tears to the eyes of everyone present. "I promise to love you," Angela said, looking into Bernard's eyes, "in wealth and in poverty, in truth and in forgiveness, for all the days of my life." "I promise to love you," Bernard replied, "honestly and completely, with everything I have and everything I am, for all the days of my life." As they kissed to seal their marriage, Angela caught sight of Marcus in the crowd. Her ex-husband was watching them with the expression of regret and resignation, finally understanding that he had lost his queen to a man who knew how to treasure her. But Angela didn't spare him more than a glance. She was too busy being kissed by her husband, too busy beginning the rest of her life with the man who had caught her when she fell and never let her go. The Angela Morris Foundation for Women's Legal Aid opened its doors a month after the wedding, and Angela threw herself into her work with renewed passion. She helped hundreds of women, fought dozens of cases, and built the clinic of her dreams. But her greatest victory was the love she had almost thrown away, the man who had lied to her and then spent the rest of his life proving that love could overcome any obstacle, even the obstacle of truth. As Angela sat in her office at the foundation, her hand resting on her growing belly, she looked at the picture on her desk. Bernard in his work clothes, painting her apartment with such care and love. He had been pretending to be someone else, but in that picture she could see the truth he had been hiding. He had been pretending to be poor, but he had never pretended to love her, and in the end that was the only truth that mattered. The queen had reclaimed her kingdom, and she planned to rule it with love, forgiveness, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest victories come from the courage to fight for what you've lost. Sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that survive the truth, and sometimes, just sometimes, love really is enough.